Today is November 7th, 2011. We're doing lesson 4.3 now. In this lesson, we're going to be solving quadratic expressions using the quadratic formula. Okay? So, the equation of a quadratic expression is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. We know this. Normally, we could solve for x by factoring. We've learned that before. Okay? We have an example here where we're unable to factor the question. Okay? You guys can go ahead and try it out if you like. But I'm going to tell you can't find factors of this question. So, if we get into that, I still may ask you, or you still may need to solve for x. This is the formula you need to remember. And we've written it on the side over here. It's called the quadratic formula. You need to write this down. You need to know it. When you can't solve it, that's when you know. Yep. Okay. So what's important is I'm going to try to color code this for you guys. Our b value is negative 30. That's where we'd be plugging b into in this equation. Our a value is 1. That's where we'd be plugging our a's into the equation. And our c value is 225. And this is where we'd be plugging in c. So this formula, which we have here, and I need you guys to remember, you need to plug in the a, b, and c variables into this formula in order to solve for the x value. Okay? So we're going to work through this together. As a side note, you may be actually able to factor a question, let's say, but maybe you didn't figure it out. You could still use this formula. This formula always works every time. So, say you don't feel like factoring it, you could just go straight to this formula to solve for your x values. I'm going to let you know it's a bit complicated to practice, but we're going to go through it, okay? So, the very first step is I have to plug in the right numbers. I have negative, and if you notice, it's negative 30. So there's actually a negative sign in front of this b. So it's going to be negative 30. Okay. So we have negative 30 plus or minus. Oops, I want that to be in black. Plus or minus the square root of b, which is our negative 30 again, squared, minus the number 4 times our a, which is 1, times our c, which is 225, divided by 2 times our a again, which is 1. So that's how you plug in all the numbers into this equation. So, negative 30 is the same as positive 30. Plus or minus the square root of negative 30 squared. So, negative 30 squared is 900. 4 times 1 times 225 is 900 again. Oh, we got a special case here. It's negative 4 times 1 times 225. So let's show that again. Negative 4 times positive 1 times 225, negative 900. Okay? And finally, 2 times 1 is the number 2. So we end up with 30 is equal to plus or minus the square root of what? divided by 2. What is the square root of 0? 0. So normally at this part is where it gets a little tricky because we have to split it into two equations. This is a special case. Because we're square rooting the number 0, we're adding or subtracting 0. So I'll show you what we normally do. Normally, because a square root has a positive and a negative answer, we now split this equation, and we'd be working with x is equal to 30 plus square root of 0 is 0 divided by 2, and we'd be working with x is equal to 30 minus square root of 0 is 0 over 2. If you notice, we're going to end up at the exact same answer. But normally, let's say we were dealing with example the number 9, we'd be dealing with positive 3 as a square root and negative 3 as a square root. So we'd end up with two different answers, which would make sense because if we have a quadratic, we have two different x-intercepts a lot of the time. In this case, this is where the vertex is touching the x-axis. Anyways, 30 divided by 2, it's going to be the exact same thing over here. Our x value is the number 15. Okay? So after plugging this into the quadratic formula, we discover that x is equal to the number 15. Okay, here's another example. We'll quickly define, we know this is our a, whoops, that's our b term. And this is our c term. We're going to do the same thing, but I'm going to show you a different solution you might end up with. So remember, this is when y is equal to 0. We're solving for the x value. We're trying to find out what x is when y is equal to 0. I tried factoring this, doesn't work. So I'm going to put into the quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac, everything divided by 2a. We're going to plug our numbers in. My b term is 2, so I get negative 2 plus or minus square root b squared again is 2 squared minus 4 times a is 3 and c is 15. All divided by 2 times a, which is 3. So I've plugged all the numbers in. We go to solve this. We get negative 2 plus or minus square root (2 squared is 4). Then we get negative 4 times 3 times 15 is negative 180 divided by 6. We end up with negative 2 plus or minus the square root. That's why I usually do straight lines. Negative 176 divided by 6. Now, I have to find the square root of negative 176. So 176 negative square root, not a number. There is no square root of a negative. No two equal numbers, so a positive and a positive or a negative and a negative, will give us a negative answer. So that means there is no solution. There is no value of x when y is 0. So when y is 0, there's no value of x. I want you guys just to think a little. What kind of parabola would that be? It could be up, it could be down. What's special about the x-intercepts? Does not touch it. There's no solution. Okay? In our other one, let's try to make sense of the other one. In our other one, we'll quickly draw a little graph here. Because there's only one x-intercept, that means the vertex is right on the x-intercept. Okay? Finally, our third example. Okay, oops, sorry. Remember, we're solving for when y is equal to 0. I tried factoring it, couldn't get anything. So I used quadratic formula. I'm going to plug the numbers directly in since we've used the quadratic formula twice now. That's the formula we're using. So I'm going to get negative -5. That's my b term. Plus or minus square root. B squared is -5 squared. Minus 4 times 2 times -1. Divided by 2 times 2. Okay? -5 is +5 plus or minus square root. -5 squared is 25. 4 times 2 times -1. Now, I want to show you this. Good. It's -4 times 2 times -1 gives us +8. So we're adding number 8, and we get 4 underneath. Now we're finally going to be able to square root a number where we're going to get 2 answers. Is equal to 5 plus or minus square root of what?
33.
Good.
Does it give you a decimal?
Yep.
You round it to your, round it to the, what you call it?
Okay, I'm finding the square root of 33. So we're going to type that in our calculator.
5.7445.
Great. But remember, I'm going to be splitting this into 2 equations. So the square root of 33, 5.74, we have it up there. So I now get 5 plus 5.74 divided by 4. No. And 5 minus 5.74. 2 decimal places is good. Okay, remember this is x equals. These are our 2 values of it now. Okay? 5 plus this number divided by 4. Almost said 2. 2.68.
What?
2.68. And in the other example, 5 subtract 5.74 divided by 4, negative 0.185. So I now have my 2 values of x. If this was on a graph, our 2 x-intercepts, we have 2 values. We have a positive one and a negative one, and it looks like it's a positive opening upwards. So we have some parabola that looks like that. The only difference is our x-intercepts are not round numbers. We have decimals.